Hey, what is up, everyone? Back in my backyard again as we continue this journey on the Sermon on the Mount. And before we dive into it for today, I want you to think of the Ten Commandments. Now, even if you're not a Christian, not religious, I guarantee you've at least heard of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, all of those things. What Jesus is doing, we talked in the last video about how your righteousness must exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees. And what we said is that God is more concerned than just mere behavior modification. Just typical religion, going to church, dressing a certain way is good at behavior modification. But what God is interested in is a life transformation. And what Jesus is going to do for a lot of the Sermon on the Mount is he's going to take the Ten Commandments. He's going to say, you have heard it was said. He's going to give it a commandment. And then he's going to say, but I tell you, and he's going to give a real way of how to live that commandment out that goes beyond behavior modification and really goes to issues of the heart. Now remember, we talked about this in our first video on this. When Moses gave the Ten Commandments, he went up on a mountain, Mount Sinai. And I don't think it's any coincidence that when Jesus gives the Sermon on the Mount, he also goes up on a mountain, right? Moses was the lawgiver in the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, Jesus is giving this new law, what some theologians call the law of Christ, of what it means to follow Jesus, know Jesus, and make him known, and how that affects the way we interact with each other. So with that as an introduction, let's just pick up where we left off. If you have a Bible, join me in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. If you don't have one, pull it up on your computer. If you're watching this on your computer, just Google Matthew 5:21. I am reading out of the ESV, or the English Standard Version, but whatever version of the Bible you use will be sufficient. So Matthew chapter 5, verse 21. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. So there we have one of the Ten Commandments, you shall not murder. Verse 22, but I say to you, this is Jesus, this is the law of Christ, the greater righteousness, that everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. What? Like, that should cause you to stop and pause and be like, this is a radical new demand, a radical new call by Jesus. But what he's getting at, if we talk about this righteousness that exceeds behavior modification, he wants to begin in the heart. And at the end of the day, murder, violence, all of those things flow from a heart of hatred. Hatred will destroy you. Even if it doesn't cause you to destroy the person you're mad at. I think someone once said, having a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping it hurts the other person. And that's true about hatred as well. When we allow ourselves to be filled with hatred, whether it's with politics or culture, whatever is in our world, hatred will destroy you. You are drinking poison. Bitterness, hatred, grudges, all of that is poison. It will destroy you. It will destroy your family. It will destroy your church community. That's why Jesus has these strong words. He begins by talking about hatred. Verse 23. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So Jesus thinks this is so important. He's saying, like, look, if you are worshiping God, like you're in the midst of worshiping God, and you're offering, let's just say, money, right? A gift at the altar. You're offering something to God as an act of worship. Jesus is saying, no. Stop what you're doing. The best worship that you can offer God is to reconcile with those you have hurt and who have hurt you. The best offering you can give to God is living at peace with your brothers and sisters who are around you. Not just physical brothers and sisters, but all those who claim to be followers of Jesus. Even outside of that, hatred will destroy you. And when you recognize hatred in your heart, even at the altar, the best thing you can do to worship God is to seek reconciliation. To be willing to say, I am sorry. To be willing to have those hard conversations. Let's keep going. Verse 25, come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. In other words, judgment is coming, is what Jesus is trying to get at. Now, on that day, it might be talking about actual going to court, but I think in some ways it applies to just judgment in general. Friends, we all like to think of Jesus as what I call like this bobblehead Jesus. You've probably seen that figure of people in the cars with the Jesus that's bobbling his head, with kind of giving you a thumbs up like, yeah, your behavior is great, but here's the reality. God is holy. You are not. God is holy and I am not. He sent his son Jesus to live the life we could not live. Jesus lived a perfect life. He died a death we deserve to die, a humiliating death on a cross, stripped naked, beaten beyond recognition, and crucified on a cross in my place, in your place for our sins. They laid him in a tomb, and 3 days later, he rose from the dead. It's only in Jesus that you can be reconciled and put in a right relationship with God. But apart from Jesus, my friend, there is judgment. God is a judge, and because he is a holy judge, you will be judged for your sin. And what Jesus is saying, if you hold on to anger and if you hold on to bitterness, you will face judgment. I don't think by doing that you lose your salvation, as some people talk about. I think refusing to let go of anger and bitterness as hatred is a sign that you haven't truly encountered Jesus. There's this beautiful story in the Gospels when Jesus is reclining, which means he's having a meal with some Pharisees. We talked about them in the last video. And while he was having the meal, a woman came in with a rough reputation, and she poured out this perfume on his feet and washed his feet with her hair. Very like crazy moment, like culture wise. And the Pharisees are like, yo, teacher, do you not know what this woman has done who is touching you? And Jesus said this thing. I might mess it up, but I'm going off memory. He said, do not rebuke her. Do not rebuke her. And he gives this narrative about or people in debt being forgiven of their taxes. And he talks about the one who's forgiven of a greater debt is going to be more thankful. And then he gives kind of his punchline or the meaning of the story. And he says, he who is forgiven little loves little, but he who is forgiven much loves much. The truth is, all of us, the Pharisees, the religious experts, the Pope, you name them, every single human being, with the exception of Jesus, we have a lot to be forgiven for. We are incredibly broken. We are incredibly sinful. And when we recognize how much God has forgiven us, we cannot hold on to bitterness and anger. So, hey, hope you guys found this helpful as you wrestle with forgiveness and bitter and hatred in your own life. And as we wrestle with these issues of the heart as Jesus brings them up. I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you found it helpful. And I will see you guys in the next one.